Hi, I'm Milena Marler, President for AMAOPS. This bonus episode of the Guide to Doing Med School is brought to you by AMAOPS, aka the place for the osteopathic community. Whether you're a physician rocking the white coat, a student pulling all-nighters, a resident juggling rotations, or even the family member or loved one of a DO, AMAOPS is your home base. We are here to cheer you on, celebrate your wins, and remind you to drink your water and get some sleep. Seriously. Now, speaking of wins, how about winning a $100 gift card towards a fresh pair of Figs scrubs? Yep, we are running a contest that you'll love as much as you love coffee-fueled study marathons, but with less stress. Here's how to enter. First, share your favorite episode of the Guide to Doing Med School on your social media. 2, use the hashtag YPN giveaway. That is hashtag YPNGIVEAWAY so we can find your post. The contest runs from November 19th to December 31st, and the winner will be announced in our upcoming January episode you won't want to miss. It's time to channel that DO determination. Hit share, and maybe those scrubs will be yours. Now let's dive into this awesome bonus episode.
Paging Student Doctor.
Howdy. Welcome to the Young Physician Network, or YPN's Guide to Doing Med School. This is the first of a few bonus episodes that we have planned for Season 1, which will serve just to supplement our goal to support you through or prepare you for your first year of med school. Let's get started. You might have heard students in our first 4 episodes introduce themselves as either students of Kansas City University or of A.T. Still University's osteopathic medical programs. These are Missouri's only 2 osteopathic medical schools currently. So what's osteopathy? How does the DO program compare to an MD program? Why does it matter so much that we named our podcast The Guide to DOing Med School? That's what we're going to get into in this episode, Osteopathy Explained. Hosted by me, Sammy DeLuca, a third-year osteopathic medical student at ATSU KCOM. A.T. Still University is located in both Mesa, Arizona and in Kirksville, Missouri. But the Kirksville location is special, and not just because they accepted me. A.T. Still stands for Dr. Andrew Taylor Still, who is the founder of osteopathic medical philosophy and who opened the first osteopathic medical school in 1892. This school was called the American School of Osteopathy, but is now known as ATSU. His first class opened with just 21 students, and it included 6 women, which is really fascinating because up until this point, during the 1890s, women weren't typically allowed to study alongside male counterparts. And Dr. Still wasn't just interested in women's equality and the women's suffrage movements of the time. He was also a vocal opponent of slavery, and he served in the Union Army during the Civil War. In his service and in the following years is when he actually grew really frustrated, and after losing 3 of his children to spinal meningitis and a 4th to pneumonia, Dr. Still decided to explore alternative theories of medicine. He called his theory of medicine osteopathy, after the Greek words for bone and suffering. To get a better understanding about Andrew Taylor Still and the DO program of the past and present, I talked to Jason Haxton.
Hi there. My name is Jason Haxton. I'm the director of the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine located on the Kirksville campus of KCOM ATSU. I've been the director of the museum for 24 years now. And so anything that comes in on Dr. Still, I usually get to see. And then I make that available to the world audience, the students, the faculty. There are people all over the world with an interest in osteopathic medicine. And so I gather that information and make it available. We're an accredited museum, which is very rare. It's about 3% of all museums. It's a lot of work. but to know your museum is one of the best in the world. I'm happy to interview and tell you a little bit about our unique and rich history.
So we'll just jump right in. I gave a brief intro, but I really want to specifically for the first question focus on what do you think in Dr. Andrew Taylor Still's early lifetime or his education really got him interested in radical ideas like accepting women to his medical school and protesting slavery in the late 1800s?
Well, he comes from fairly humble beginnings. I mean, his father actually from a fairly wealthy plantation slave owning family in North Carolina. His mother came from a frontier family that lived off the land, gathered their own food, hunted, created their own soap, made their own buildings. So we really have these extremes of people coming together as mother and father. What's unique about the family is A.T. Still's father, Abram, left the plantation because he didn't believe in that practice. And along with two or three of his brothers, they had already gotten a medical education for what it was worth. Blister bleeding, poisoning, dosing, 6 months of education, and you could go out and kill people. But the bottom line is that was medicine. Half the people who saw the doctor died. A.T. Still said if the doctor was late, you had a good chance of living. So bottom line is dad leaves the plantation, hooks up and marries with this woman who comes from a frontier background, where A.T. Still's grandfather, his mother's father, was actually captured by the Shawnee Indian, sold to the Canadians as a white slave. So slavery was understood by the family, and it was a terrible institution. Literally, the community had to raise funds, go to Canada, find him, and buy him back. And so we can see why, from both perspectives, the family had huge experiences in understanding this and didn't want any part of it and transferred that information to their children. They had 9 children in all, A.T. Still being the third child of the 9. And the bottom line is they all practiced abolitionists. They didn't believe in slavery. If anything, took it even further, and Dr. Still would say that, I kind of have this moral compass. My religion is to love all people and to be fair to all people. And that's it. If we just do those two things, I think we've got the bases covered.
So what did Dr. Still's education look like?
So here's this young man living with these parents that have kind of given up material possessions to live off the land and really be involved with humans. And so he learns a lot from nature. His schooling was probably pretty intermittent, but the parents actually tried to find whoever was passing through, say maybe a mathematician or a business person. They would actually host these people to train their children, and they maybe got a better education as a one-on-one with the best, kind of like an apprenticeship, as opposed to the education of that time, which again, 7th grade was kind of the limit anyway for most of the rural areas. So Dr. Still was actually educated a little bit better and had access to books. He read everything he could get his hands on. And so we see that this combined with actually having to live off the land, you observe nature, you see how the systems work, you see how things happen. And so he was very good at observation, which again is very important to health and as a physician, is seeing what's going on here and can we correct it. So these prepare him, but the bottom line is Dr. Still didn't want to be a doctor. He wanted to live the American dream, kind of like his mom. Get some land, raise your crops, find the love of your life, have a family, celebrate the holidays. I see Christmas trees in your background.
It might only be November 13th, the day that we're recording this, but I am ready for the holidays.
Dr. Still loved holidays.
So if you could tell me now what changes, when does he start thinking about medicine?
Everything was going great for him, except in Missouri, the weather is very unpredictable. And the 4th of July, a storm came through with hail and destroyed his crops. So there was no chance to replant in July. His animals were also taken out. And so farming was like overnight destroyed. He said, well, my father educated me. I'll become a teacher. And so he went to teach in the public school system, but it only paid $15 a month. And he said, no, it just isn't going to work with my family. We can't survive on this. My older 2 brothers are physicians. Dad's a physician preacher. They make a good living. Nothing can take it away from them. maybe I should be a physician. Now, the United States, again, being a frontier of most of the country, we literally didn't have anywhere to train doctors. So apprenticeship was a legitimate form of making new doctors. And so he could saddle up with his father, who was already trained for what it was worth. And after a year or two, after the physician said, my apprentice, my student is ready, then you would go to the courthouse and he would validate that my student is now a physician. He knows everything I know. You pay your fee and you get your license. And so Dr. Still was initially received his license as a physician and surgeon through apprenticeship. He uses that information a little bit during the Civil War. He's a steward, so he's working with other doctors, kind of extending his education, and learns a little bit more. And then actually, he goes to one of these schools, much like his father. And after about 6 months, says, when are we going to learn the good medicine? I mean, you're bleeding people, you're dosing them with arsenic and cyanide, you're burning and popping blisters. When are we going to get to the good stuff? And they're like, this is it. He said, oh, yeah, no. This is not medicine. I don't want any part of this. And so he actually leaves the school without gaining his diploma.
Oh, I had no idea he declined to finish his MD training.
He got the training, but refused the degree, said, I don't want to be affiliated with that kind of medicine. So people often say, well, was he an MD, a medical doctor? No, he was a physician surgeon through apprenticeship. We actually closed 2/3 of the medical institutions, within decades, to show you how bad the medicine was. It was better not to have these medical schools than to actually have them training people in this manner. So Dr. Still was kind of on the right track, but we do have people kind of wonder, well, was he an MD? He got the MD training and was pretty much put off by it. So he starts, looking at medicine on his own. His wife of the time, she has a baby. It dies. It's a tough life out there. She's lost several children. She becomes really depressed and she just spirals down and dies. And so Dr. Still realizes the importance of optimism in health. And by the time he figured out what was going on with his wife, it was too late. He could not stop her death. Now he ends up with 3 children and actually 4 total, but one older daughter and 3 younger children. And he needs a wife, so he marries a second wife. And she's educated, a professor. Her father's a physician. She marries Dr. Still and has a boy, and the boy dies, and the way it is, has another child, a little girl. And about the time this little girl is about 11 months old, the children from the first marriage start getting sick and dying one after another. And while they're focused on the children of the first marriage, the baby from the second marriage gets a cold that develops into pneumonia. And he loses the 3 children plus his wife's second child now. And that's when they go on this mission saying, my gosh, we've got to we shouldn't lose spouses. We shouldn't lose children. We've got to find a better form of medicine. Because not only did the doctors I hired treat my children, but I think they tortured them and they died. And this isn't right. And so this sets him and his wife, who has a pharmacy background, on this journey for a better form of medication and health. And it comes down to the foundation is, if we're healthiest, we can fight disease better. So look at your diet, look at your exercise, look at your mental health. And through the Shawnee, he sees the first manipulation. If everything is in the right place, your alignment is good, you tend to have health flow in and waste flow out. But when things are basically twisted or not in the correct position, it begins kind of a tumbling effect of ill health, and your body is constantly compensating and changing, but it's not doing the best it can.
Yeah, this is sort of related to the 4 tenets of osteopathic medicine. The body's a unit. The body's capable of self-regulation, health maintenance. Structure and function are reciprocally related. And rational treatment is based on understanding of the basic principles of the body, the interrelationship of structure and function.
And so Dr. Still starts to figure out manual medicine at the lowest level with your hands, puts the body into place, and people are actually doing better. And so he goes on this journey of manual medicine. And so if we want to look at why the MDs were so angry with him, was they were only basically doing things to the body with drugs. And AT Still was actually thinking of health, where you actually maintain through diet and exercise, mental health, and manipulation. And then when disease comes, your body is in the best position to fight it naturally, which it does. Well, again, this prospect was very alarming to the MDs of the time who wanted to dose you, and half their patients died. And so they were really against Dr. Still. And it kind of, again, he thought it was helping medicine. He really didn't understand why he was attacked so much, but he knew it was the truth. And so he stuck to it. And because his patients lived, they told other patients, and soon he had followings of literally hundreds of people were looking for his help every day. I mean, if you imagine if your loved one or your child or your spouse or your parent was injured and the only possible hope was this man, you would do everything to get his attention. So he was so overwhelmed with patients. He didn't want to start a school, but he found no alternative because the need was so great and there was so little of him. And as it was, he was running himself ragged. So he starts the initial school just to relieve the load of patients and starts teaching manual medicine. And we're very lucky that a European from one of these better schools, William Smith, who was an MD from the Royal School of Surgery of Edinburgh, 7 years of the best school, his own family physician helped invent chloroform for anesthesia or Lister's germ theory. He came with a wealth of information. He hears of these miracle cures, cripples walking again, and what's this guy's background? And he's told, well, he was learned on the frontier with his daddy. And William Smith said, no, this guy isn't doing something. He's fooling them. Again, Smith is in the country on a honeymoon, but he's selling medical stuff, and he decides, I'm going to go see this guy because he's a fraud. But when he meets Dr. Still and he sees what he can do with manual medicine, he was like, my 7 years of education is incomplete. Teach me this OMM manual medicine aspect, and I will do anatomy, and we will now have a school. And this is where Dr. Still saw it could probably work. And so they trained the first class, which in essence becomes the pushers, shakers, and movers for the future class. So the first class is about 21 students and 6 women. But within a couple of years, there's 600, 3 classes of 200 rotating through. So it's the Europeans that helped Dr. Still figure out how to build the school, how to do admissions, how to recruit faculty, how to do all the coursework that is required for a medical education. So again, these were beyond Dr. Still. He had an American idea. He knew how to help, but his success was others. And he always said, I take it so far, everybody makes it better. And that's been kind of the rule of osteopathic healthcare from that time with the limited knowledge. I mean, we didn't have vaccines. We didn't have the medicines of today. When people say Dr. Still didn't want medicine, well, it was arsenic, cyanide, mercury, those opium. The things that were the medicine were very limited. They were like 5 or 6. And you guys said none of these help. And so, but we didn't have the penicillin or all the different medications that can do a variety of things, blood pressure, medication, all kinds of things we use today. Those did not exist. So we cannot hold Dr. Still accountable for saying no medicines because what they were doing was bad. And in the end, we came around in 1910. Flexner was an educator who looked at the curriculum and said, this is horrible. We should close 2/3 of the schools, and they did. But we survived because we were a European-based school, and we grew. Each school looked like the previous school. And so in that sense, we have always been progressive. And Dr. Still was not the kind of leader that says, I want the attention. I'm the end all of medicine. It was like, I have an idea. You're going to make it better, and let's make this progressive. And I think that's where we find the success of osteopathic healthcare, and every person comes into it that way.
Right. I remember the anecdote being told as a first year that AT Still didn't really want his name on the school or on any particular osteopathic treatment. It wasn't his style.
So it leads us to where we are today, where we're, now teaching. We had x-rays during William Smith's time because we wanted the best technologies. We actually had magic lanterns, which were kerosene lamps that were projecting microbes on the wall. I mean, again, Smith was the techie of his time. And we continue that with ultrasound today with our Still Research Institute, where we teach accuracy.
So we kind of see now the historical start to osteopathy. and how it differed from the beginning, from allopathic or MD schools and practitioners. But what do you see as some of the significant differences that have persisted?
Well, nothing off of the MD line, but the DOs do everything the MDs do, and they add on the manual medicine, which, because if you can alter somebody at the lowest level with your hands, without drugs, without surgery, that's probably the best environment, is to not be as intrusive. And so they do all that and the rest of the curriculum. So it's not surprising that through the military and different agencies, DOs are seen as having three skills: hands, drugs, and surgery. The MDs predominantly have had drugs and surgery. However, we now see, with information being available, we actually welcome MDs to come and learn the manual medicine every year. And so it's through the OPTI program. And it's really quite fascinating because, again, it doesn't mean they have to do it as well as the DOs who have been trained. They just have to be able to diagnose. It is the same like cancer, oncology. A general practitioner doesn't treat cancer, but they can find out what it is and send you to the specialist. So are these MDs coming and learning what somatic dysfunction is within the body enough to be able to say, hey, this is a problem. I know anatomy. Now I know where to find the issue. You need to go to a specialist that will help you with this. And even among the DOs, not all of them do manual medicine. They know it. They can diagnose it. But that doesn't mean they do it, because, again, that takes a person who does it all the time and retains those skills. And so, again, I find that that's one of the bigger differences, is we have a better understanding of anatomy and how symptoms or physiology can look like disease. And, again, something that looks like a stroke or a heart issue could actually be a nerve issue within the thing, and you adjust the nerve in the body and it goes away. And so I do think there's a better understanding of diagnosis when it's a physiological or an anatomical issue. So it's just a different skill set that is part of the philosophy and the education of the osteopathic physician.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, like there's a lot of integration with MDs. And we now share rotations, we share step exams, we share residency, licensure with our allopathic counterparts. And it's not always the case, and there's still discrimination out there. But how do you see this trend continuing, like this conglomerate? Do you think we're still going to be separate in the future in meaningful ways, or where do you think we're going?
Well, I think that's the thing, is I think what Dr. Still always wanted from the beginning was he wanted to enhance the physician role, MD, DO, whatever. He wasn't trying to create something new, but when he found out the support wasn't there, he had to take this branch there. But we feel it's moving towards the middle, where there is an acceptance and appreciation. The reason for decades we had our own hospitals was the prejudice that it wasn't that our physicians couldn't treat, but it was just like, we're not going to have those people. And again, this is from the 50s, the 60s, and 70s. Starting on the 80s on, I think, because, again, information, technology, understanding came to a higher level. Suddenly it was like, oh, wait, you guys are quacks. You actually have something to offer, and we should share that. So I do think that this blending, we no longer have our own hospitals because we don't need to. That there was distinct prejudice, and that wouldn't permit doctors to actually get residencies in fields of anesthesiology or dermatology. So we had to create our own hospitals in order to have opportunities for the specialties. By and far, DOs like to be general practitioners, and that's been opened up. And as a result, Dr. Still was one person in 1874 with an idea. 150 years ago today, now over basically 25% of all students going into medical schools are getting an osteopathic education. So from one person to 1 in 4 to 25%, that is amazing. There's 66 teaching institutions. You can kind of see them as medical schools, but some schools have a couple under their belts, like in other states. But the bottom line is there's 66 medical schools that are basically training these doctors, 10 more in the pipeline. Maybe in 3 to 4 years, 33% of the physicians, student physicians, will have the osteopathic education. So we're certainly growing. And we're worldwide. Last week I was in Sydney, Australia with an international osteopathic meeting. I then was in Brazil 2 weeks ago. I just got back last week from Italy. I go next week to Berlin and then to France. Osteopathic healthcare is respected throughout the world because it is something that can be done, patient to practitioner, and you can always make someone come closer to their best health. And I think that's another focus is each person is unique in what they're needing, and the relationship is to help you find your best health so that you have this better journey of life. Now, we're all going to die, but what if we procrastinate a few more years, or we give you better mobility? And that is the approach that the osteopathic physician takes, is that we can always make the situation better. And I think that is, again, part of the philosophical attitude of our teachers and our students that go through the program.
I think in closing, I just like to wrap with, we have both first-year students. The podcast is geared towards helping them get through their first year and be successful. And we really focus on being like holistically successful. So we talk about mental health. We talk about financial well-being. We talk about how they can be successful in their relationships and not just academics. So we have that group listening, but we also have people from all across the country that I've been in contact with at different pre-medical schools. So different colleges that have pre-med programs come and listen in. What do you hope that those students, those prospective students who are maybe like deciding what schools to apply to and where they're going to go, or if they're going to do the osteopathic route, what do you hope that they take away from this bonus episode?
And so maybe because we're the newer form of medicine, but sometimes newer is more progressive, you might not know as much about us. And then you have the opportunity now maybe to follow the threads of some of the things I've told you about the patient-centered, holistic perspective that has always been in our history as part of medicine. And that maybe this is the route you want to take. Again, our physicians, as Dr. Still, can do everything. You just, have to decide what route you want to take. And so we have more general practitioners, but I've seen some of the most fantastic anesthesiologists and surgeons come out. Again, it is your choice as to what you want to be. We just predominantly like the community and family kind of environment. The other thing is, as Dr. Still said, is you're your own first patient. If you can't take care of yourself, how can you take care of somebody in need? So you need to get your physical and your mental act together. You need to basically be monitoring those things so that you project health. Your patients, they want to trust you. And if they don't trust you, it's not going to do a lot of good, but it is kind of a soul to soul. And if you're already feeling good about yourself and you want to transfer that to them, they will feel that and they will see that, and it's not always an easy path. We're all struggling with how our genetics or phenotypes are. But if we're doing the best we can with what we have, that is what we're going to roll out to our patients. So it is first year. It's like drinking out of a fire hydrant. It's so crazy. Second year is always better because you kind of figured it out. But this is a great journey in medicine, whatever direction you go. And I think wanting to help people and you yourself staying healthy so that you can do that. As Dr. Still said, I can't think of any journey that would be better than going through the medical profession. And so good for you guys for having this interest. And, again, backing you 100%. You can always contact the museum if you have more questions about osteopathic healthcare.
Awesome. I'll just add that I was a social worker before this. I got my master's in social work. It was why I picked osteopathy. When I was looking and researching between the two after having been a social worker for years, what did I want to do next? And I've never regretted it. My first preceptor was an osteopath when I started doing rotations my third year, and she was an osteopathic surgeon. And she was the coolest person I had ever met to that point. Not that you're not really cool, Mr. Haxton. But she was really cool. And it's just been an awesome experience. I'm really excited. I'm like a year and a half out from being a practicing osteopath. It's going to be great. For all the students listening, it's going to be great for you too.
Okay. Great to hear your story. And again, everybody comes in it from different angles, but it always works out the best. I have to say, traveling the world, the coolest people to hang out with are the osteopathic healthcare people.
We're pretty great. We're pretty great. And that's it for our first bonus episode. We'd like to extend a thank you again to Honorary D.O. Jason Haxton for his fantastic contributions to the episode and for his efforts in advocating for the osteopathic profession. If you find yourself at the museum in Kirksville, be sure to say hi. And a big thank you to AMAOPS and President Milena for her support and their support at large. Our giveaway is open to any student, undergraduate, or DO in the United States. Don't forget to share an episode with the hashtag YPN giveaway to enter. That's YPN giveaway on any social media platform. Thanks for listening.